Hello and welcome back to Buck the Trend podcast. I'm Matt Nartiv.
And I'm Steph Clutterback, and this is episode 5.
5 episodes in, we're here.
And thanks for carrying on listening to us chatting away.
Yeah, and the positive reviews and 5 stars on Spotify.
Yeah, any and all reviews we fully appreciate, and the kind words on YouTube. Thank you.
And keep the questions coming in.
Yeah, please do, because it makes our day and it makes our lives just finding things to talk about way easier. Not that we have any issues finding things to talk about, because I can talk a lot.
But we've had some good ones come in, so we're slowly getting our way through them.
Yes, gradually, and trying to do it in a way that makes sense as well.
Yeah, needs to be a bit of an order to it.
Because some of the questions make sense a bit later in the season.
So if you've asked them and we haven't answered them yet, do apologise. We will get to them.
Yeah, please just be patient.
And if we haven't, send it again.
Yeah, just keep asking us.
So yeah, welcome back. We're at home. Both a little. Well, I'm certainly a bit tired. You've had a day off today, so
I've had a day off, but it has been very much back to reality. So I did little bits of work while I was away, but I had to picked up some work again now that I'm back, and I've spent today probably about 7 hours of it staring at an Excel spreadsheet. So my brain feels a bit fried.
Yeah, so a day off training, not a day off life from work.
Not a day off life, no. There's quite a lot of life to catch up on when you've been away for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and the noticing the temperature change where, I'm sat here in a jacket and trousers. So.
I'm half pretending I'm still warm. I've got a t-shirt on, but...
Although we're both very all in black
stealth
today.
mode.
Yeah.
Don't really know why.
Ninjas.
I've been wearing this all day, but don't know why I've picked all black.
Well, we're not changing now.
Not got a particularly exciting wardrobe.
No. So we're back. Talk us through your last week on camp briefly.
Yeah, so it was actually great because Matt turned up. So there was someone there that basically took over my thinking for me. Which was wonderful because it was at the point that my brain was starting to lose its capacity to work. And at the same time, there was like a changeover. So basically on the Saturday or the Sunday last week, the lot that had been there the week before left and then new people turned up. So going into the second week of camp, it was like a refresh, which was really nice because it felt like actually 2 separate weeks, which kept me pretty engaged. Unfortunately, we also had a massive increase in wind in the second week. So the first week was like perfect Lanzarote weather. Other than 1 day of rain, 2 days of rain because I did get rained on, but that was like brief and completely my fault because I cycled into the rain cloud. But yeah, first week lots of blue skies, not much wind. Second week I went on 1 day. It was like 50 kilometre an hour winds, not even gusts, just winds. And I was cycling at like 18.5 kilometres an hour into a block headwind on the flat/downhill, questioning so many of my life decisions to that point.
Yeah, and I brought the wind with me.
Yeah, you certainly did.
I left the UK just as, I can't remember what the storm was called. Begins
Owen?
with an E.
Win?
It was something Irish, beginning with an E.
Yeah, apologies if
maybe had an F in it.
That.
We'll go with I don't know. Give me an E. This is like the phonetic alphabet.
I think it was. I saw a brilliant reel the other day about someone panicking with the phonetic alphabet and just making up completely random letters.
This is a segue.
I then got lost in a reel hole, a comment hole on the reel, and someone had done the phonetic alphabet for Harry Potter.
Oh, wow.
So it obviously wasn't a phonetic alphabet, but I was like, this is... So like A was Alohomora. H was Hogwarts.
What was E?
Expelliarmus.
You were meant to shout it.
Expelliarmus.
Okay.
So great, yeah.
Sorry.
Matt brought the wind with him. But he also brought lots of friends. So we had a really fun second week. Week 1, I banked 26 hours of training, which is my highest number of hours, but not my highest volume or like total loading. So if you think about hours being one like very arbitrary measure, that's just like the number of hours that you spent exercising, whereas we look a lot more at like total load. So that includes intensity and the impact that that has on your body. So I have actually done some bigger, in inverted commas, weeks last year.
So for those on Training Peaks, TSS.
TSS, yeah, TSS as like a guidance for it. So yeah, two ended up being 26-hour weeks back to back. So my two biggest weeks, longest weeks as a triathlete. Majority of it was cycling. So I think both weeks was 15 hours on the bike, and then pretty even 4 hours each of running and swimming, and 3 gym sessions across the 2 weeks. So
all on your new bike as well, new road bike.
Yeah, on my new road bike.
How was it?
It was great. A little bit of fiddling with position. I think every time you get a new bike, geometries just vary a little bit, so you can get it kind of set up to what you were riding before, but you need to tweak it, especially when you're riding over 15 hours. You very quickly figure out where the areas of not comfort are. And also, when I crashed in Indian Wells, I had a stone in my palm. And everyone on YouTube, this is my palm. And it hurts now to rest my hand on it. So I've had to change how I ride my road bike a little bit, which then doesn't help when you're trying to set up a new bike, because you can't just set it up as you set it up before. So yeah, that was fun, but it's all pretty simple to do. So it was just a case of dropping my saddle and moving it back a little bit so that I could, change my hand position.
A little bit more fiddling, and then we'll be there.
Yeah, well, I think we're pretty much there now.
Straighten the saddle. I've noticed that.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I think I bent my saddle at some point. Haven't crashed that with that saddle on though, so I don't know what I've done.
I think we just need to straighten it. We'll get there. And we've just taken delivery of your TT bike. So
we have. We've
got a shoot to do, and then hopefully the announcement will be coming.
I really hope we get to announce it next week.
Yeah, TBC.
I am ever the optimist. Realistically, it might be another 2 weeks, but hopefully very soon.
We'll work out some dates, and yeah, hopefully that should be good and exciting.
Yeah, I think so. Actually, someone did ask about what my TSS was for both weeks. My first week was like 1,300, I think. I presume second week was about the same, if not a little bit more, just because I had one bike with intensity in it, which tends to nudge up the kind of total loading.
But I always find with triathlon, I mean, swimming can also skew it better or worse for a lot of people. It depends how you set up your zones for swimming, I think, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So
I think, mine...
It's kind of...
mine are accurate.
It's kind of unique to you, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, so that number is just based on what data I've got in Training Peaks and the zones that we've been basing it off. Like, it's hard to... In theory, it's comparable, but it's also not really too comparable.
Yeah.
So yeah, but people ask and we answer.
People get.
People ask, people get. So yeah, that's that. And then this week, now we're home. I had a super easy day yesterday, day off today, and we start kind of building back in, but it's a week at about 80% really.
Yeah.
Just trying to make sure, number one, you get back from camp and it's actually quite busy. So I don't want to put myself in too much of a hole.
So we've gone through your last week on camp.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if I had a question or if I posed it as a question, either or. So I would like to know, what was your best and worst session on training camp?
Yeah, fun question. Weirdly, worst ones are easiest to do. Just I think they stick in your mind a little bit more. I've got 2 contenders. The first one was a 5-hour ride. My only 5-hour ride, so it was the Tuesday. Actually, the day that we recorded the podcast last week. So on the Tuesday. And I'd been out for 5 hours and repeatedly got rained on by like 8 different rain clouds. I watched them all come in, and just every 20 minutes was having a soaking. And it was equal parts hilarious and super demoralising. I think the only reason I got through it was because I saw so many other people out on the road. And we all like shared war stories over dinner about how wet we got and how it was impossible to avoid. So that was the worst session until Friday. So this was the day where it was the windiest day that we were out there, and I had a 4-hour ride with hill reps in it. And I figured hill reps was actually quite a good session to do in the wind, because you just ride to the hill, you ride up and down it, and then you like carry on pedaling for a bit and then come home. What I'd kind of forgotten or chose to ignore was, yes, it's a headwind to Tabayesco, and it's a really nice tailwind up it with the wind direction that we had. However, it was going to be a crosshead the whole way down. And so the going up was wonderful and the efforts were great, but the descending was horrendous. And just coming back through the village, my bike was like hopping to the right hand side as I was getting blown, and it just really stressed me out. I had to do it 4 times. And after the second time, I messaged Matt and I was like, I'm done. I'm so done. I want to come home. I don't want to do it anymore.
She says she messages Matt. I had about 4 minutes of voice notes, I think, at this point.
Yeah, so a lot of things had happened. On my ride to the hill, my bank card had flown out my pocket just because it was so windy. But my jersey was actually just flapping around, and I had my bank card loose in there. Well, loose in the back pocket. Usually I have it in a zip. This jersey didn't have a zip. And it's my favourite one to do intervals in because it's slightly thinner. And it just disappeared, and a car very kindly stopped to help me look. But he watched it then fly away further up the volcano. So that was like 40 minutes into the ride. So I had to cancel that.
So anyone in Lanzarote, if you find Steph's bank card.
Yeah, please don't use it. I'll be very sad. No, we have cancelled it. Thank you. I'm pretty sure I cancelled it on the ride.
There's
I was
probably
panicking.
not enough on there anyway. You could probably buy yourself, I don't know, an ice cream and a bottle of Coke.
Get some Haribo or an Aquarius.
But that's probably about it.
And then had the issue going up and down the hill. And then on the way home, I had 3 separate guys just jump on my wheel without asking and without saying anything. And as a solo female in 50km/h winds, something I really take issue with. Like the first one was on my final rep up Tabayesco. I'd caught them up and he just sat on my wheel at the end of my effort, and I wanted to stop my effort, but he was he was literally glued to my back wheel. So it was just like, yeah, just put me on edge a little bit.
Okay, here's one. As a male who often will jump on the back of trains and people to shelter from the wind, I guess there's a thing in that to say hello maybe, and
just have it ask.
Yeah, with a solo female, maybe we just say hello, ask if you can sit in,
I think
take some turns.
Just generally ask, like whoever it is, just say, is it all right if I jump on your wheel? Because there may be a very good reason that they say no. So we find it around racing when you're out on the race course, like a couple of days out from the race, and there's lots of people around. People will just jump on your wheel, and I'm like, I hate it anyway, but especially around racing, I don't know you. You don't know me. I don't know how you ride your bike. You don't know my tells. Everyone has different signals for like pothole, or I'm turning, or I'm slowing, or I'm coming out the saddle, or I'm changing from big to little ring. You know, there are so many things that it takes time to learn from others, and there may be a very good reason that they don't want you there. Yeah,
and there's a big movement. I see a lot on social media with females running in the dark. And not just, you weren't cycling in the dark, but just running in general. And I guess it's quite intimidating, male or female. Someone comes up running behind you. I guess it's similar on a bike. So yeah, let's just...
Especially when, as a female, I've overtaken you.
Yeah.
So I've overtaken you and you then put in a dig to get on my wheel. It feels an awful lot like you're being chased. And quite often your brain, it's like being followed. Your brain knows you're being followed and knows that there's someone there that shouldn't be there.
Yeah. And like I say, it's almost all cases, it's people just being friendly. Maybe they don't want to say hello because they're scared. I don't know. So let's just, I don't know.
Just say hi.
Hello, say hi.
Say hi and ask, and then we'll say yes or no. So that was probably my worst session, but I did get back and I did do the whole ride. And best is like, I actually genuinely, I had a great time on camp. Like other than those 2 rides that had moments of like, oh God, this is just grim. None of it was to do with the actual training. It was more the conditions and what I was having to force myself to deal with. But I had so many cycles where I got to ride with other people, which is such a it's a fun thing for me to do because I don't do it at home. I got to ride my bike loads, and I love cycling. I absolutely love being on my bike and being on my bike in the sunshine. All of my runs went well, which is a huge thing. Like none of them were any more than they needed to be, but I executed each of them as I wanted to, which is a huge development point that we've been working on over the last 12 months. And then swimming, I got to swim outside in the sunshine every day. So
yeah, I was going to say you picked your swims well, mainly in the sun.
Oh yeah, I was swimming at like 2:00 in the afternoon so that I'd get some good sunshine.
And you had a nice new swimming costume, which gave you some great tan lines.
Yeah, it certainly did. It was a strategic pick of one of the De Boer swim costumes that has a really open back. So I maximised tanning. I was actually very comfortable as well, so
good.
Not all bad.
I'll quickly give a rundown of. I didn't really do any sessions, but I don't really have a best or worst. I just had a best.
Can you tell everyone about Jack's poll?
Jack's poll. Oh, sorry, Jack's poll, not Jack's poll.
No, poll.
Got confused. Yeah, I did a bit of cycling with some friends out there, and Jack Schofield is forever looking for more content ideas. He had I want to say 6 foot, 8 foot, 10 foot, not sure how long it was, pole attached to his bike essentially, with the GoPro on the back. If you haven't seen it, have a look on. Did Jack share it or did
I think it was his Instagram? Yeah.
Either or, go check out his Instagram, Jack Schofield.
It looked absolutely ridiculous,
and you can see his pole.
Yeah, his pole that was very long, and yeah,
it did. If you sat on his wheel and he got out the saddle, you could basically take I want to say a headshot from it. I'm not sure what I'm doing.
You get hit in the face.
Hit in the face with a GoPro, which is
it's probably not what you want.
But if you're wearing a helmet, I suppose you're okay. So yeah, I had a lot of good sessions. They weren't really sessions; they were just fun. I did a bit of swimming, I did a bit of cycling, I did a bit of running, and a bit of gym. So,
you did, yeah.
Yeah, mixed it up. Just did what I fancied when I woke up. Did a few days with all three.
He did, and he slept very well on those nights.
Yeah, we did have a couple of early nights.
But I think the whole trip made us realise like how much easier it is when you stay in like a hotel or a complex that is everything's there for you. So in the past we've done Airbnbs and kind of figured out meals on our own, but having set meal times, food all provided for you, all you do is wake up, eat, train, eat again, train again, eat again, and then maybe train and sleep. It was a really efficient trip away and super easy.
We've spoken about it before. It's just the barriers to entry, isn't it? I mean, it's just very easy to get out of bed and train.
I did get buffet fatigue though.
Yeah, I think I did after day 2, I think.
I had enough. Wanted a bit more variation.
Yeah.
But it's okay. We had some home cooked meals now, so I feel better.
But I think having done it now, you now work out the best way to tackle a buffet.
Yeah,
and the people.
Yeah. It's the people.
Well, I think it's and the food, because I went in on day 1 and I guess it's new, exciting, whatever. You kind of help yourself to whatever you want. You go back for 2 plates, maybe 3.
Maybe 4.
And then you soon get sick of that. So, I think having a strategy. Well, we can talk about a buffet strategy another time, though.
Yeah, maybe we plan one before our March trip.
Yeah.
We'll have a podcast discussing our buffet strategy. So, yeah, I think that probably wraps up camp.
Yeah.
Our fun 2 weeks away. Home looking a bit more tanned than when we left.
Let's go on to a bit of a topic and maybe a couple of questions.
Yeah, so this actually comes off the back of me not feeling great going on camp. I was 4 weeks back into training. I felt pretty lethargic. I guess you could say confidence was not super high. I think crashing out in my last race meant that I didn't necessarily finish the season on the high that I wanted to. And there are obviously doubts about, do I want to kick off my season in 10 weeks? Like we said, I had a maybe race and it would be dependent on the 2 weeks that we had in camp. So I want to talk about this week, like trusting the process. And it's something that we've always lived by, and it's even when we were rowing, it's like you turning up every day consistently and delivering on the sessions that are put in front of you, not doing any more than you need to, also not doing less, but trying not to get frustrated when you're not feeling as you want to too early. So I think once I had a great race season last year, and I know what it feels like to stand on that start line and feel ready. I don't feel ready right now, but I'm just in the process of trusting the process and delivering on the sessions and trusting that it's okay to not feel tip top right now, and that I don't need to be delivering these mega sessions. Like, I've just done 2 weeks of easy training essentially.
Yeah.
And base miles. I haven't done anything at all that is worth writing home about.
Yeah, and that's where we want to build into the season, isn't it? I overheard a conversation when we were away, and it was essentially along the lines of the triathlon season. If you're racing a world championships, give it 7.3 worlds, or Kona, Hawaii with the Ironman distance. It doesn't really start until July, and it's kind of true. There's a lot of racing beforehand, and you do see a lot of people peak and get really good results early season because they've put in the work throughout sort of December, January, February, and that's fine. But if you're looking to peak in October, you don't want to be hitting your peak in March, April, May. So.
And I think that's pretty relatable for people that are maybe doing an Ironman later in the year. So if you think back to when we were age groupers, and when I was an age grouper, you still are. That's not managed to sneak his pro license in the background. We had Ironman Portugal in October, which is obviously super late, and really the loading, like you say, the loading for it didn't start till July. So at this point, I was still very much in off season. So I think I was doing loads of Zwift racing, and we were out doing a long run on a Saturday or a Sunday, but we weren't doing Ironman training. We were just doing base work and laying the foundations for some of the other races that we were racing in the season. And it's so easy to get caught up and want to be doing X, Y, and Z. And, you know, I'm doing an Ironman this year, so I need to be running 2 hours or 2.5 hours every week. But realistically, you don't. And I mean, some athletes thrive off super high mileage, but for most people that are trying to balance work as well, I think you end up burning the candle at all ends, not even just both ends, just every single possible. You've got like a hexagonal candle with loads of different heads that are all lit and all burning. Whereas actually what you want to be doing is turning up consistently and executing. So my coach always used to say it's much better to do 80% of the training at 100% than 100% of the, or was it the other way around? 100% of the training at 80% than having to do 80% of the training, because you try and do it too hard and then you end up not executing. So yeah, like just turning up and deliver exactly what you need to and no more, especially at this time of year.
Yeah, and we see that a lot. It's a case of, like you were saying, the 100%, the 80%. You don't need to be 100%. Every session doesn't need to be perfect to have a perfect season. If anything, you want to have, well, you call it the rule of, well, I'd say you don't, the rule of thirds. And that's something you kind of live by, isn't it?
Yeah, so it was one of the high performance podcasts, I think. I can't really remember, but they were saying that you take your training, or life, but take your training sessions, the number of sessions, you should be having a third of them as great, a third of them as fine, and then a third of them as below par, bordering on like very not great. Because that's when, if you've got too many not great, then you're probably training too hard and you're carrying too much fatigue and you can't execute. And if you've got too many that are great, you're actually not working hard enough and you're not pushing your body hard, well, so that you're not forcing the adaptations. So you want to have this balance across the entire spectrum, because it means that you're finding your limits and then you're recovering from them. But to be quite honest, sitting in that middle zone is probably the most effective place to be, because you're getting the physiological benefits that you need to without overexerting yourself. until you have to, because there are moments that we do need to ask our bodies for more than they've got to give.
Yeah. And I think people will find that quite hard to not believe, but I think everyone, you see even the world champions in every sport, and you just think they must be hitting every session perfectly to get that perfect score, perfect time, perfect distance, whatever it is, that they're hitting every session perfectly, and they're not. There's a lot of overreaching, there's a lot of underreaching. It's just dependent on the day, and it's getting the best out of yourself on that day. But the best out of yourself might not be full effort. It might be just what's prescribed as the training session.
Yeah.
And 100% for that day could just be, I don't know, a recovery day and recovering 100%.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it also goes with things like developing your swim form and getting faster in the water, because it's as much as a skill as it is physiological development, and it takes a lot of time to get used to swimming and to be comfortable in the water, and it's hard. Swimming is really hard. Like we joke about my heart rate being high running. It's higher swimming than it is when I run, and I've been swimming my whole life, and you just have to get you basically just have to commit to being in the water and letting your body switch off its emotions and stop panicking. And it can be really frustrating to just swim a length, stop, recover, swim a length, rinse and repeat. But it is the most effective way to detrain your body from panicking, because that's quite often a lot of the fatigue that people feel when they swim.
Yeah, and it's taking a step back and switching off. Like you say with swimming, sometimes it's easier to not overthink it and just think about one or two things maybe through that session. You're not trying to change the whole stroke in that one session, so find one thing to work on or two things to work on through the session and just make those your focus.
Yeah, for sure. We don't need to be doing everything. No. We don't need to be trying to get better at everything all at once, because we actually can't. So master the one thing that you're trying to work on, and then find something else.
Yeah.
Because you'll just get overwhelmed.
So have we got anything else on trust in the process?
No, I don't think so.
Just we're going to trust your process this year then?
Yeah, trust my process.
Well, on camp, we said last week there was no hero session, so that was sort of your process of that.
And I think that is largely our approach to this year, is
just do the basics right.
Yeah, get the hygiene factors sorted, and that is managing myself around training. It's executing the sessions. I have a tendency to sit at the top end of every range that I'm given on swim speed, bike power, and run speed. So actually for me it's maybe not doing that and looking at training blocks as a whole and saying, oh, actually on this session maybe I want to push it on a little bit, but for the others why don't we sit bottom to middle range? Because I'm still getting a great benefit from that, and if I can then run well the day after that and then bike well and then swim well, that is much more beneficial than me reaching for an extra 5 watts in these intervals, for example. We have created a journey this year that builds through. It tests me big time at the start of the season, and we have a really big block of recovery going into Kona. Recovery that has racing in, I just mean in terms of between Ironmans. And I'm going to be asking a lot about my body. So I am going to have to trust the process that we've put in and the people that I've got around me to help me get there, because it's going to be super uncomfortable this year.
Yeah. Okay. And that's good. I think that we can sum up there, trust the process, which kind of leads us on to, I think, before we go on to some questions, maybe your first race of the season. Now, are we going to go with just one and then another one next week, or?
No, let's do 2, because they kind of come as a package deal.
2?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it. So first race.
So my first race of the year is going... At the moment, all subject to change, is Oceanside 70.3.
Which has already sold out.
Yeah, so it's...
Sorry, not sold out.
The pro entries closed within a week, which is mind-blowing.
So obviously quite a popular one. It always is first race of the season.
Yeah. It is super popular. It was oversubscribed last year. Same again this year, but we got the entry in quite early. So, yeah, I'll be flying out to California.
So anybody else at Oceanside this year, give us a shout.
Yeah, let me know. TBC about how we managed to travel out there, because the second race of the season...
She doesn't mean by aeroplane.
No,
We're
obviously
definitely
I'll be
going by
flying.
aeroplane.
I'm not going to walk. But whether Matt will be able to come or not. Because my second race of the year, it's going to be Ironman Texas, which is 3 weeks later. So I'll be flying out to Oceanside and staying in the USA for 3 weeks, and then racing a full distance Ironman.
Party in the USA.
Party in the USA. Going to be channeling my inner Miley Cyrus. And for those of you that are pretty astute and know what the Ironman calendar is, they're both Pro Series races. So as it stands this year, I am going to be looking at doing Pro Series, but if things don't go as we would expect in the first 2 races, then we might pivot. Like, we're super fluid and flexible with what we're looking at for this year. But the Pro Series really excites me, so I want to do it.
And starting with 2 big races, the likelihood is these will probably be 2 of the toughest fields that we'll see this year.
No pressure.
So, yeah, exciting times.
It's really exciting.
So if anyone is at either of those races or would like to follow along,
give us a shout.
Yeah.
Let us know.
So, yeah, we'll start with those 2 because we haven't entered any more races yet and we haven't fully agreed. So we'll just start with those 2 for now. Then we had a couple of questions. Would you like me to go first?
Yes, please.
So, I had a question last week where I suggested some potential races that I could look at doing this year.
Mm-hmm.
We had plenty of suggestions, which was great. Everything from a swim run race to an ultra marathon.
We had a couple of ultras come through.
Yeah, we had a few ultras. And also a relay for Outlaw, which is a Ironman non-branded distance in the UK for those listening. Only thing is it would mean that I'd have to run the marathon.
Doesn't look very excited by that.
Which I don't know why. I don't know how that appeals to me, but we'll see. So
have you made any decisions?
I haven't made any decisions. I'm enjoying running again. I can actually run a decent distance now, so it actually feels more like training. I managed 5 4-minute sort of thresholdy sort of efforts yesterday. So I feel like I can actually complete sessions properly now. So that's fun. So maybe there'll be a running race. I've got a few half marathons, and then maybe we'll just build it up and see where we go from there. Steph's convinced he wants me to do an ultra, but I will have to see. So maybe we'll have to start at a smaller sort of 40-miler type of distance before I...
Just a small 40 miles.
Well...
Or 40k. 40k is not an ultra,
there's plenty 100-milers and 100-pluses. So, yeah, we'll start hopefully around there. But we'll see. So thank you for the suggestions. Keep them coming in if there are any more. And maybe I will... I'm pretty indecisive, but maybe at some point I'll make my mind up. And that leads me on to actually a question I had from a friend who is also a coach, a rowing coach. And I think predominantly, well, I don't know if he does coach predominantly females. I think he might. Probably should ask. I won't name him on here. But the question came along essentially was about the difference between, I suppose, how the science and how coaching style and everything's changing between male and female, and how previously we sort of looked at females as small men.
Yeah.
Was kind of the science behind it. Up until fairly recently, there aren't many. You look at all the studies, they're predominantly on male participants. And whether that's due to, a lot of factors are due to that. But maybe from your point of view, how do you see it, or how has it changed from when you were a swimmer to a rower to a triathlete? How has it changed through the years from when you were a child to, I guess, now adult racing?
Yeah, it's almost quite difficult to compare. So as a swimmer growing up, everyone did the same sessions dependent on what your main event was. So all the middle distance racers would train together, all the sprinters would train together, all the distance swimmers would train together. There might be a bit of cross-pollination between like backstrokers and IM swimmers, and fly and freestyle and stuff, but in general you trained with your distance and or with your stroke, kind of dependent on the day, the session, and what the coach was feeling like. There was no distinguishing between male and female. That may have been because a lot of that life was pre-puberty for me. So we were all children.
Yep.
Until, well, I guess like 14, 15. But even after that, it didn't change massively. I think when I went to sixth form, there was much more recognition that we were small humans navigating like a pretty tumultuous time in your life in terms of I was living away from home. I was trying to decide what I wanted to do for university, trying to do A levels, which at the time was like it is just the biggest thing that you've got going on in your life, isn't it? So it was all a bit chaotic, but there was no real difference between the females and males that were in the squad.
Yep.
As a rower, we had the men's and women's squads. So at my university, which is the University of York, we had the men's and women's squads who each had different coaches. So our training was different, but that was much more down to the individual coach and their preferences, as opposed to someone with oversight looking at the program and being like, this is the outcome that we want from our athletes, and this is how we need to approach men and women differently. The sessions themselves were relatively similar. They just kind of fell on different days. And I like, yeah, there wasn't really, yeah, I would say there wasn't really any distinguishing like characteristics between the sessions other than we just had two different coaches. That was back in 2014, so it's a good 11 years ago. Yep. Thinking has moved on quite a lot since that point.
Yeah, and I think a lot of things have changed in terms of cycles, in terms of where, I know it's different for everybody. Some people suffer differently through their cycles, some peak at different times. I mean, I'm not a female, so I can't speak on this topic very well, but just from experience with, I guess, you, some days you're fantastic, some days complete opposite, but it's quite hard to predict that, isn't it?
It is and it isn't. So it depends on the woman and it depends on their cycle, and also and that being the kind of the hormones that they experience and the symptoms that come along with it. Like I get really intense pain on days like 1, 2, and 2.5, that I always have done, and it feels like I'm being repeatedly kicked in the stomach. Manage it with painkillers. I can usually train, and quite often training helps me feel better because you get a bit of an endorphin hit and it does lessen the cramping a little bit. I'll notice the like 3 or 4 days before, so at the end of my previous cycle, my heart rate's way higher, my body temperature's up, I sleep worse, which means that I'm recovering not as well, which is super fun when that also coincides with race week. So I've got taper energy, and also I'm kind of coming to the end of my cycle, so everything is just like absolute chaos, to put it lightly. And then other than that, I don't really have huge differences in my physiological markers, whereas I know there are some women that get nothing, and there are others who have periods where they feel super strong.
Yeah, and I think this is a bigger topic that we could potentially explore, maybe try and bring on a more subject matter expert within this field.
I think so.
Just to talk about it from a more generalised point of view, because, like I say, I have no expertise in this area whatsoever, being a male. But I think it is an interesting topic, and especially females in sport, because there isn't you I mean, you can search the journals and have a look to see what literature there is, but there probably isn't very much, and it is changing,
but slowly. And I think if you're listening and you have like a menstrual cycle and you notice things that are not normal, and you get like some weeks that you're performing really well and other weeks that you're not performing as well, or you notice that you're getting ill every month around the same sort of time. Like that stuff's super normal, and it can be managed if you're aware of it. So I think the first step for any female athlete is to just take note of the patterns that you notice month on month.
Yeah, and I think that leads on to levels of fatigue, and then even, is it REDS, I think it's called?
Yeah, so if you don't get a period.
Yeah, which is, like high fatigue, isn't it? But we can speak, I know a lot of friends who've had similar experiences with it, so maybe there's a conversation that we can have there at some point.
Yeah, it's a really common I guess like outcome of high endurance sports for women that have been doing it through like teenage years, where your training volume's just so high and your body doesn't recover.
Yeah, but also I think there's an element of you potentially could come also from underfueling and overtraining.
Yes, so that's kind of all part and parcel of it, and there doesn't really seem to be like one definitive cause.
Yeah.
So for some it's underfueling, for some it's too much mileage, for some it's too much intensity, which is why it's so hard to diagnose. But I'm sure we can find someone to come on and talk through it, because it is, it's stuff that I've had to be mindful of for the last like 20 years.
Yeah. So if we know any good female physiologists, nutritionists, there's probably a whole host of experts that could help out in that area. So yeah, thanks, Steph. That one sort of answered that one, I think.
Well, I guess we probably more opened up a discussion, because everyone is different, and there is, much like women aren't small men, not all women are the same.
Yeah.
And we all have vastly different experiences with our bodies. So it's just something that, if you have a coach, have conversations with them about it and help them understand how your body works and when you're at your best and when you might need a little bit more wiggle room to kind of rest, recover, eat chocolate on the sofa. All of those things are great to do. Speaking from experience, yeah. Matt likes it too.
So, yeah, I think that wraps up our questions today before we go over too much, which leads us on to our What the Buck moment of the week. And I think you picked this one, but I picked it up at the same time. So
found it.
I'm going to go with it. So it is a bloke called Rhodri Williams, which is a very Welsh name. If you don't know, you might have seen him on Instagram, and if you haven't, you might soon. I think I saw his first video and he had 1,500 followers, and I think he's up to about 14,000 followers now. So he's growing at quite a fast pace, because it was only just over a week ago. So essentially, he's Welsh, follows rugby by the looks of it, is also a bit of a runner by the look of it, I guess, as well.
Well, I hope he is.
Yeah, well, he will be at the end of this. The Six Nations is going on in Britain, Europe.
Yeah. Just a quick pause. For those that don't know what the Six Nations are, it's a rugby tournament.
I was just going to explain.
Good.
You can go on.
It's a rugby tournament that happens every year between England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, France, and Italy.
The Six Nations.
I mean, it's Six Nations that play rugby, and it's just like a historic tournament. They all play each other in a round robin, and the team that wins the most wins.
Yep.
Wales will not be winning.
And the team that loses
most loses.
Gets the wooden spoon.
They get the wooden spoon.
So I'm biased because I'm Welsh anyway. But this bloke is going to run a mile for every point that Wales loses by in the Six Nations. So after each game, he will run a certain mileage dependent on the score. So Wales played last Friday night. They played France, who are probably one of the favourites going into the competition, in France. So a tough place to go with, I don't know, a struggling Welsh team at the moment, should we say. And they started well, didn't get any points on the board, so I guess didn't start that well, but lost by 43 points, which meant that he had to run, Steph?
43 miles.
Exactly. So he laced up his shoes and got on with it and got the 43 miles done. So fair play to him. I think it's about 70 kilometres, 69,
It's an
70.
awful lot. So we think he lives relatively near us. He basically ran around the entirety of Bristol.
Yeah. So fair play to the bloke.
And I mean, the fact that he decided he was going to do this is quite amazing because Wales love to break our hearts.
Yeah, I don't think we could have quite expected to lose by 43 points.
No, he was probably expecting 10, right? You know, go for a nice 16k run every weekend.
But the good news for him is Wales play Italy this weekend, I believe.
He needs a rest week. Wales, you need to win.
Which should be, on paper, no, not like that.
Don't say that.
But on paper should be his easiest game, which they'll probably end up losing the rest. They may even lose against Italy. Who knows? So
that's our what the buck moment of the week, because that is absolutely outrageous and is providing some entertainment for a Welsh supporting rugby household.
Yeah, and I will say his videos are quite fun, well curated.
Yeah,
and it might even be his job. I can't remember, but yeah, Rodri Williams,
spelt Rhodri.
How else would you spell Rodri?
Well, if you don't know anything about Welsh, you could spell it however the hell you wanted, but it's RH to start. RH, Rodri.
You gotta roll your R's.
Like a cat purring.
So yeah, go check him out and keep an eye on the score to see how far you'll be running this weekend.
Yeah.
So yeah, what the buck moment of the week, Rodri Williams.
Being an absolute hero and giving us some joy, even though Wales is losing the rugby.
Is it bad that I hope they keep losing by more and more?
Yes.
I really want to see him run 100-miler or something stupid.
Oh, I really no.
But as long as it's not England.
Yeah, it would be great if Wales beat England.
Being Welsh, I can take losing to any other team apart from England.
And we've now just lost about 500 listeners. Thanks. See you never again. It's the end of the podcast.
But yeah, I think that is the end of the podcast. So keep the questions coming in. Anything else?
No, I've got nothing else to say, unsurprisingly.
Well,
surprisingly.
Then we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.